Okay, do you have your own personal army to rise up against the court systems at your calling? If not, then you might want to consider fleeing. Um, but the courts have gotten wise to that too. So you want to try to manipulate your flight risk possibilities depending on whatever crimes you've committed. Okay, so you want to first ask, when did flight risk, like consideration, really begin? What's the history of a flight risk? Okay, and it probably goes back ever since when jails or dungeons were created. Okay, there was a reason they made dungeons in the lower bellows of the castles, and that was to prevent the criminal, the accused, from running. Okay, it wasn't just to torture them. Okay, take away their torch so they lived in complete darkness all the time. It was also to hold them for their court trials. Okay, whatever kind of courts they had, and they'd hold them in various ways. Okay, not everybody had enough money to finance those fancy dungeons. Okay, there would be other ways, maybe to stop somebody from running. You'd cut off a foot, depending on the type of crime. Okay, you'd reduce their mobility in some way up until the court date. Okay, and then after that, if you're still incarcerated, then that's punishment. Okay, but before that, a lot of times they'll have the guilty, or the not guilty parties. Regardless, they're still being accused and they're still being held in a purgatory in some way. They have to make sure that they show up at the court. Okay, the accusers of the not guilty party. All right, so courts have to weigh in a bunch of different factors to prevent to ensure that the subject will stand before the accusations, so that justice can be meted out. Okay, and I looked up flight risk on the YouTubes first, and it's just all a bunch of rap videos, pretty much. These rappers love rapping about flight risk, and it got me thinking. I'm like, I'm traveling all over the place. I'm acting like I'm a flight risk. But these rappers, I don't know if they travel like I would. I don't think they would live a lifestyle like me. I think they would probably be more likely to run from the cops but stay within the city. Whereas me, I bounce from city to city, and it's a different kind of a look at flight risk. Depending on if I committed the same crime as a rapper, and also, is a rapper pretty much, could their rap song be used against them? I'm a flight risk, you know. Don't you try to diss. So if they're making rap videos about being a flight risk and then they commit a crime, I think that probably doesn't look so good for them. But it's all in entertainment. So there's determinations for flight risk. Okay, and here they are. All right. Family or community ties. Okay, do you have any family ties, dependents? Are you part of any community organizations, volunteer programs, religion? Do you share the same religious beliefs with a group of people and get together? Just activities in general. So how strong are those ties? How do you prove that? But I think that it's the courts would determine your family ties, but they won't know that unless you bring that up. You would talk about maybe schedules that you have coming up or something like that. Employment, does your employment keep you in the city, in the area within their jurisdiction, because they don't want you leaving their jurisdiction, or at least they want you to come back to their jurisdiction when you have to answer for the accusations. Does the job keep you in the area? Will the job keep you in the area at the time? Okay, previous record of appearing in court. All right, I got this guy coming up. I don't know what the. I'll stop it. Okay, back. Previous record of appearing in court. Did you run before? Okay, that would determine if you had that flight risk issue. If you ran before, or did you gather up an army before and it was too weak, then that's also a consideration. The cops will bring a larger force to the courtroom, like what happened to me in Coquille, Oregon. I was making a big fuss on the social media, and the cops may have gotten the impression I was trying to rise an army, because that was their logical response to the call flooding that I never called for, that people were saying in the comments, which I could have blocked those guys, but I didn't. And I think the next logical step to the cops was, okay, how many people are going to show up in courts and maybe intimidate the judge? So the cops tried to meet force with force. That's what they do. Okay, that's in every city, I would think. Meet force with force. Can you build an army up to fight for your traffic ticket, to help you fight your traffic ticket in court? Is it worth it? I mean, do you really want to expend those resources on something that's so petty? If it really is petty. So your flight risk, it's your previous courtroom experiences. The judge will look at your other experiences with other judges, if you had any, and how that went. Previous, yeah, financial resources. Do you have a lot of money? Are you poor? I don't know how much that matters. It depends individually on the judge, because some judges don't care if you're living on the streets. That looks even worse. If you're homeless, then you could be more of a flight risk, because you don't have any ties or anything, so they'll keep you locked up. And I didn't really say this in an order of priority. I think financial might be number one, but it kind of, once again, maybe this list is right. Maybe it was written by somebody smarter than me, that financial is not as important, because judges will lock up a poor person as well. No, rich people tend to get out. Although that's the whole reason I'm making this video, is because of Bill Cosby and how he's having difficulty with this flight risk issue. The judge doesn't want him. The judge raised his bail, and he's all mad about that, because they're calling him a flight risk. They raised the bail based on the flight risk threats. His age, maybe they feel he's Bill Cosby would be willing to just leave the country and live out his last few years in freedom, separate from these charges. Maybe another country is willing to host him that's an enemy of the United States. Because if you're gonna flee out of the jurisdiction, you have to weigh the severity of the crime and how far away you need to get away, and not exactly how far away, where you need to go. Maybe like what Edward Snowden did, go to Russia, an enemy of the United States. And that's a guarantee that the United States won't be able to enforce the jurisdiction over him, because would have to fight through the Russian army to get to Edward Snowden, and the United States has to weigh how important it is, how severe the crime is, to rationalize fighting the Russians just to get to that one guy. It's not worth it. That's why you go to a group that has an army that could say, we're not respecting that your jurisdiction. You have no jurisdiction over us, and that ends the court's arguments. They can't do anything. But most of us within the United States don't have our own armies to fight the court system. You get into politics and get into a higher position that can help with influence in some ways. Just become friends with the judge if there's some kind of a charge. You just have to be smart about it. Play your politics good. All right, play them smart. So you pick and choose your battles. Pick and choose when you want to run. All right, what's more important to run from? Okay, a little parking ticket. Do you run from that? I didn't. I decided to stand my grounds, and everything that occurs with me, I'll make public, because it's public anyway. I might as well just be forward about it, and also make it monetized as well. In this day and age, you couldn't really publicize your own criminal history as much as we can now. 20 years ago. So fleeing, cameras keep people honest, in my opinion. Okay, so fleeing isn't as much of a priority, because it's hard to hold the camera when you're running. So I just stand my ground, and when I put up videos, I get some street lawyers giving suggestions that's actually kind of helpful. It's interesting to read the suggestions, and I work with that on how to best decide what to do. I don't flee courts, but the fines, I'll fight it. If they're still gonna fine me, then I kind of flee that. At least I fled those, like city fines. It seems like you answer to the court. Okay, you don't want to flee the court right away. You don't want to be so quick to flee a court summons. I'd say at least respond to that. And then when it comes to the fine, then you can flee, because as far as I understand, the court is like, they'll put a warrant out for your arrest if you don't show up at all. You show up once, that's good faith. But then when it comes to the fine, then I think it's more forgiving to flee, especially when the courts don't offer you any community service. It's their fault, because they don't see any value beyond the dollar. They're ridiculous. That's not justice. Okay? So you pick and choose when you want to flee and when you want to build up your army to fight the courts, and yeah, get other people's opinion, find out what they think. I mean, if you watch Game of Thrones, you get an idea of, and just reading history in general, you get an idea of how a lot of justice is served between groups. A lot of, I mean, you think about it for killing somebody, it's perfectly legal in war, but it's not in society. So it's like killing is got opposing views. The view of killing is viewed at from different ways. It's rewarded. You're given a Medal of Honor if it's during wartime, or if it's not during wartime, you're given a lifetime jail sentence, or even a sentence of death. So you got to think about that. And it's definitely better to run in peacetime, run away from them problems, instead of running towards the problem. Okay, but in wartime, it's better to run towards the problem rather than run away from the problem, because then you'll get dishonorably discharged and called a traitor to your country for running from the battle. So it's the conditions, the time, it's a lot to think about there.